Time to jump in 3, 2, 1. So, a few weeks ago, I made a video marathoning a bunch of shark movies in preparation for Shark Week, Discovery Channel's big special event every year where they release a bunch of new shark documentaries in celebration for shark conservation and research. So I thought it would be fun to make it a point to watch every new documentary, and I'm not going to go into a lot of depth. Most are about 45 minutes long, so I'd rather give you a short sell and let you watch the documentaries for yourself. Just a line or two about what each documentary is about and like what they're doing, and a few key takeaways I took from the specials. As you can imagine, just about everything I watched is going to be on Discovery Plus, but it's also on HBO Max and, you know, the regular Discovery Channel. But there were a few things on Disney Plus, and their rival Shark Fest event included in here too. I'll make sure it's noted somewhere where I watched it. Supersized Sharks. So there is an island off the coast of Australia that just congregates extra big tiger sharks. Why is the question we are looking to answer for here. The things we learned that tiger sharks, or the ones that are hanging out here at least, their diet consists mostly of seabirds that they hunt when they are floating in these large groups called rafts. Other than that, watching cows being eaten by sharks is like so much worse than watching them eat fish or whales because of all the grain and straw they eat and how it digests. It is really disgusting to watch that come out in the water. Shark Beach with Anthony Mackie. I just adore listening to Anthony Mackie narrate in his natural cadence throughout this little documentary about understanding why bull sharks and other animals are moving further into the fresh waters of Louisiana. We learn that bull sharks use Lake Pontchartrain to pup and grow before moving into the open ocean. We learn that Louisiana is apparently losing the land equivalent of Manhattan every year due to erosion and water levels rising. And Anthony Mackie naturally pronounces New Orleans, and I wish he didn't have to hide his accent so much, because it's great. Baby sharks in the big city. So, we finally looked into the water around New York City after all this time, apparently, and just found a plethora of great white sharks, which is particularly interesting because nobody has been able to figure out where great white sharks pup and how their young survive on their own until now. But what we learned that baby great white sharks really need warmer waters than when they are grown because their bodies can't generate their own body heat. And they mostly eat small fish and squid, which, I mean, probably isn't surprising, but, like, super cool that we now have confirmation. Super cool. Makozilla. There has been a really big boom in recent years of extraordinary large mako sharks in the Pacific Ocean. There are a lot of things similar here to the Monster Mako series of Shark Week past. But the things we took away from this watch, there's one specific genetic family of mako sharks that is just kind of dominating the northern Pacific Ocean, which is really cool. Jaws versus Leviathan. So sometimes you can tell there is something really cool Shark Week wants to talk about besides sharks, but they don't know how to make it shark-related during Shark Week, or we do know how, we just make it fight a shark in CGI. In this case, the ancient Leviathan whale, which is like if you crossed an even bigger sperm whale with the capabilities and aggression of an orca, which they're constantly referencing here. The documentary itself is just comparing stats and getting shark footage, which is cool, but not for a second do I think anybody actually believes that a great white shark, or even a group of great white sharks, can take on a Leviathan whale. But what did we actually take away from this documentary? We took away that there was a big whale. Like a really, really, really big whale with a heckin' set of chompers. The largest teeth in the historical record at 36 centimeters. We also learned that great white sharks bite each other to assert dominance, which is pretty obvious, but it is pretty cool to see it in action. Sydney Harbour Shark Invasion. So in the wake of increased shark attacks in the Sydney, Australia harbour, we follow scientists with awesome accents follow the scientific method in a series of experiments in and out of the harbour. The big takeaways we took from here are there are just lots of bull sharks in the Sydney harbour. But why is that? It's because Sydney has just made their harbour so clean and safe for the fish that it's the perfect predatory habitat for bull sharks as well. So good on you, Sydney. You did great. Big shark energy. So this is about having a couple of great white sharks compete in a few arbitrary tests like fearlessness to develop some sort of theory around the hierarchical structure of great white sharks around mating. The things we learned that we are still discussing alpha theories with sharks, and even though that was long since disproven, male sharks have a pair of claspers, which Shark Week always emphasizes or relates to having 2 dicks, which means there are roughly equal shark dicks out there to sharks.
For every snake on Earth, there is 1 snake dick. And at first it might think, well, yeah, that makes sense, but actually, you know, only half of snakes have dick. And that means that every snake that has a dick has 2 dicks. And that's a true fact about our world.
Belly of the beast, bigger and bloodier. I'm sure you've seen the cutouts of seals being dragged by in boats before for studies. Well, now we're doing that on a whale-sized scale, and are making it hollow so we can just plop people inside and observe the hierarchical structure of great white sharks around feeding and mating. But what did wet our intellectual whistle this time? Well, this team puts forth the theory that female great white sharks are in charge of like this kind of queen boss-led harem, and comparing the 2 pretty similar documentaries in Big Shark Energy and Belly of the Beast, I kind of prefer Belly of the Beast's approach of a more observational study with kind of minor influences on the shark behavior in contrast to everything that happened in Big Shark Energy. Monster hammerheads, Species X. So there are some especially big and especially aggressive great hammerhead sharks off the coast of Turks and Caicos with these distinctive cleft chins. So this special, the scientists are looking to find and get a biopsy of one of these specific great hammerheads to compare it with a baseline sample and determine if it's some kind of new branching species of great hammerhead sharks. The monster takeaways here, I always kind of forget great hammerheads are a thing. I remember hammerhead sharks are a thing, but great hammerheads are just those but bigger. Great hammerhead sharks and tiger sharks kind of compete for the same resources, which makes a lot of sense. And great hammerheads also hunt around drop-offs in the ocean, which is really cool. Great White Serial Killer Sea of Blood. Just about every year we get another installment of Great White Serial Killer where we focus on a single location and investigation on why there is an increased shark attacks in that area. This year it's about sharks off the coast of a small fishing village in the Sea of Cortez. But what did we learn in this killer investigation? We learned that the victims are divers that have been making a living off of the reef and the ocean for generations, so it's not really surprising that they're being attacked by great white sharks and sharks in the area because they're in the ocean all the time with flippers. They look like seals. We came up with a solution of a low-cost, lightweight shark deterring cages to hopefully build a better coexistence so the sharks stop getting curious and the people stop getting revengey. Also, Paul DeGreer is a great host. He also hosted Sydney Shark Harbor Invasion. Sydney Harbor Shark Invasion. Deadliest Bite. Here 2 teams are gathering the field data on bite speed, power, and slashing abilities on the 4 perceived deadliest sharks. The tiger shark, the bull shark, the great white shark, and the great hammerhead. All to determine the deadliest isolated bite, so not like taking into account aggression or hunting habits. A few things to chew on here, that great hammerhead sharks apparently have the strongest bite force among these 4 sharks, with needle teeth for grasping instead of like slashing. Another key takeaway is bull sharks suck, if you did not know that already. Last big takeaway here is this is a great doc for just empirical data, but it feels like the tests aren't necessarily comprehensive enough to really determine deadliest bite. But it's also like just kind of a framing we need to get funding to gather the data, so okay enough. Great White North. So until recently, there were no known great white sharks in the waters around Nova Scotia, Canada. Until recently. So suddenly they have a huge population of great white sharks and largely don't know why. So this is all about tagging and identifying as many sharks as we can so we can get a start on building data. And the things we learned in this doc, we learned that a lot of these sharks are originally from Massachusetts Cape Cod area and have a natural range from Florida up to Nova Scotia now. And I also learned that we don't only identify sharks with tags anymore, we're using the scars and all their unique colorings, which is all pretty obvious, but, you know, sometimes you need the word said to you. £6,000 shark. Here we are looking for a record-breaking great white shark when it comes to weight, pure and simple, but we are expanding it by looking a little deeper into the largest sharks that we can find, their diets, which means we're getting a bunch of big shark butt swabs. Here's what our brains munch down here, though. We learned that great white shark stomach acid is strong enough to dissolve most metals. Alien sharks, ghosts of Japan. This is an installment of a series we get just about every year where our hosts track and study critically endangered species, for science and conservation. This time around we are in Japan, if you couldn't have guessed, looking for the crazy rare angel shark. And here's a couple of takeaways from here. While filming, they just happened to catch 2 sharks of an understudied species in the middle of giving birth, which is wild. Japanese spider crabs grow up to 15 feet and 40 pounds, which is nightmare-inducing. Swell sharks lay their eggs in little pouches attached to lines to keep them in place. Looks like a little tampon. And this has been a documentary with the most new and engaging information for me thus far. Monster of Oz. Off of a specific coast in Australia, right near a big oceanic drop-off, there has been an unknown predator attacking large sharks and whales in a way that has never been seen before, like something big enough to fit the entire head of the largest living sharks in its own mouth. The key takeaways from Oz, we probably would have heard about it ahead of time if they actually found something new and interesting. It would have been the entire marketing push to Shark Week, just a heads up. We also learned that whales apparently beach themselves if threatened, or like in this doc they proposed a large group of whales did so to get out of the predator's deeper waters. We also learned that based on the scars and the bites we've seen in photos, the researchers pushed the idea that it is probably a normal great white shark with some sort of gigantism, but they do keep minds open because they don't really find any concrete evidence. Great White Danger Zone! So South Africa has a long history of just having a ton of great white sharks. It's where air jaws happened, after all. But in the last few years, shark numbers have plummeted because of orca attacks. Here we are looking for where the sharks may have moved, following fishermen sightings, then determining what they're feeding on in their new home base, since it appears to be kind of seal deficient. Now, what did we learn riding through the danger zone? We learned that because so much red light waves are diffused through the water, most sea life with eyes have evolved to just not see red light at all. We also learned that the sharks they find are oddly social amongst themselves, more so than other groups of white sharks we've seen in Shark Week this far. I also hope Allison, one of the hosts of this show, gets her PhD soon, because she is really killing it with her research. Sharktopia. So the team here switches between searching for the critically endangered, as in only 5 sightings in one location in years, the leopard/zebra shark for genetic samples, and also hatching, then rearing a few pups with hopes to release them back into the open ocean in hopes to bring them back from extinction, which is really awesome. But the big info we really squeezed out of Sharktopia, learned that walking sharks are the youngest evolved species of shark in the world, and we learned that shark scientists really will grab and measure just about every shark they can safely get their hands on, whether it's what they're looking for or not. We learned that baby leopard sharks evolved to look like poisonous kraits to evolve predation, which is really freaking cool. Whale sharks are also the closest living relatives to the leopard shark, and baby leopard sharks just kind of slurp up hermit crabs for food. It's really cute. But I do question, if sharks can't see red light waves, why isn't it standard to just use red light when studying sharks at night all the time? Unless the goal is specifically to attract the sharks here. Expedition Unknown. Sharks vs. Nazis. Over the course of the Second World War, obviously a whole lot of ships were sunk. In this special of the Discovery Channel's huge series Expedition Unknown, host Josh is hunting a specific wreck that has been missing since it was initially sunk, because it still contains 250,000 gallons of oil that needs to be recovered before the ship erodes and all that oil just leaks into and kills the ocean. And the sharks. This is still Shark Week. What unknown things are now known here? That there were a couple of conflicts right off the coast of Florida and the Gulf of Mexico during World War II. That was news to me. We also learned that attaching cameras to sharks to just follow them is a valid way to track shipwrecks because they act like artificial reefs and where fishes congregate and then sharks go to eat. Caught when sharks attack. So apparently there has been an increase of shark encounters, and I'm not positive, but this 40 minutes paints itself almost entirely as canon or non-professional videos taken within the last year of sharks and odd interactions, with brief interludes where scientists do their best to explain the shark behavior we're seeing. What did we learn this time, though? We learned that the increase of shark encounters is probably due to shark conservation, which is great. Woo! there are both more sharks in the water and more people in the water. So yeah, more shark bumps and more shark bites. The Real Sharkano, not to be confused with 2021's The Real Sharknado, where the stars of Sharknado study whether a Sharknado is really possible. The Real Sharkano is about host of the year Paul de Gelder studying the correlation of shark activities around active volcanoes, mostly gathering data and doing his best to make it really engaging. What wet our intellectual whistle here? We learn that the correlation is real. There are just lots of sharks around volcanoes. Why? No real conclusion, but volcanic rock makes for good soil right above and below the water, I'd imagine, leading to great plant and reef growth, leading to good fish population, leading to a strong shark population, right? Maybe? Shark Attack Island. Off the coast of an island resort, we've got an increase of shark attacks from 0 to 5 in just a handful of years. What type of shark? And why? We learn things. We learn things like great white sharks change their hunting tactics depending on the temperature of the water, which is cool. Learn that tiger sharks, bull sharks, and whaler sharks, and that's just a new species for me, whaler sharks, are all a part of the same evolutionary branch, which is cool. It makes sense. Sharks of the dead zone. A very popular breeding ground for bull sharks has become horrifically polluted in recent years. Here we are just gathering data on bull sharks still using the lagoon, as well as trying to understand what they are using to sustain themselves in the toxic waters. Data that I gather, I learned that you can take an ultrasound of a shark in the wild with a device that is like something you'd see in Star Trek, which is wild. Learn that bull sharks being born in the lagoon are starting to be born with chemically related birth defects. Big sad. Blood samples show that it's primarily human sewage and pharmaceuticals poisoning the lagoon. Double sad. And also to note, Dr. Craig has been appearing in Shark Week for years, but his co-host here, Tiara Moore, is really newer to me, and I like her a lot. She knows her stuff. Shark Frenzy, mating games. Dr. Craig is back, trying to gather empirical evidence that tiger and white-tipped sharks get their claspers clasping after engaging in a feeding frenzy. The team here does this by triggering their own feeding frenzy and then clasping cameras and trackers to as many viable targets as we can. Do they? Probably. Mother Sharker. Hammertime! So the big finale to Shark Week 2024. Not that it was really meant to be some sort of big climactic documentary, but it would have been cool if things ended on like some kind of new Air Jaws, or maybe this was like supposed to be an epilogue to Sharktopia, which honestly was a pretty awesome documentary that I just watched out of order here. But this is just about tracking scalloped hammerhead sharks with the goal of finding out where female hammerheads ultimately give birth and where the young end up pupping. The things we picked up that hammerhead sharks usually congregate around oil rigs. You want to know the best way to find out where a hammerhead shark gives birth? You 1. Catch a pregnant shark. 2. Shove a tracker up its uterus. And 3. Wait for her to give birth to the tracker and the baby sharks and just find them all at once. So that was a lot of information. This was the first time I ever made a concerted effort to watch everything Shark Week had to offer in a single year, and I'm really not disappointed. Shark Week has always had a few basic outlines for how they present their programming, but the variety of hosts and the familiar faces keep things as interesting as I think you can. More importantly, we learned a whole lot. Some of it is just confirmation of pretty basic information that probably seems obvious, but most of it was really fresh to me at least. And if you don't think we're going to run out of things to learn about sharks, not only do we know, like, next to nothing still, but what we do know, like, where they pup and what they hunt and how they hunt is constantly changing with the environment and their food sources. It's a science that is never ending, and that is really, 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 really cool to me.